We both entered the office, but we noticed that the guards were looking at us with a lot of suspicion. And the thing is, they saw something different on the cameras. They saw that a woman was coming in with us. Good evening, community. It's a great pleasure to have you here again, and that once more, you let us into your devices to bring you a selection of paranormal stories. They are going to scare us. They are going to leave us with some lessons. And above all, they will stay with us long after this episode ends. From our homes to work to the streets where we grew up, today we have a long journey ahead of us through space and time. But the good thing is that we are going to do it all together as part of the same thing, as part of something of the community. Turn off the light if possible and let yourself go. You are already listening to stories of the night. If you want to take what I'm about to tell you as just a simple legend, one of those that people sometimes tell on the street and neighbors share, that's fine. They have a lot of value and reveal the richness of our cultures, even on an intimate level. But believe me, what I'm about to tell you isn't much of a myth. It's more about facts. I witnessed most of the events I'll share. When I was a child in the Lázaro Cárdenas neighborhood, it happened on one of the oldest streets. Many years ago, there were still several vacant lots on it, just full of bushes. One of them had a wooden shelter in the back, but no one lived there except for a group of 5 dogs that took refuge there, and they survived on what we neighbors gave them. But they also survived, in spite of the neighbors, because some of them hated the dogs and taught them to be afraid of us. Whenever they saw them near their house, they threw stones and chased them away with kicks. The dogs were cautious, yet acted as guardians. It seemed they already knew us, the ones living on the street, and watched over us. Even those who kicked them, they even looked out for them when strangers came in. There were no robberies, assaults, or car thefts there. The 5 dogs wouldn't let anyone from outside walk around there. Then a woman came to live in the rooms at the end of the street where it ended, where there was no way out. In the rooms Doña Licha rented. I don't remember that woman's name, but she looked bad. She looked like a criminal. And her brother and his friends used to visit her, and they looked even worse. They walked down the street toward Doña Licha's rooms, but they did it while snooping around the whole street, as if they were looking to see what they could steal, and if the thefts would begin. One night we were all woken up by the dogs barking. Who knows what they did, but they all went after one of those thugs, knocked him down, and all of them bit him all over. They left him badly hurt, and a few neighbors the dogs obeyed had to pull them off him. It was the first time I'd seen so much blood. Despite that, even though he was covered in bites and blood, we recognized him. He was a friend of the woman's brother from the rooms, who was already sneaking around there. They knew they were going to have a hard time. The woman from the boarding house insisted her friend was only passing by and had no intention of stealing. That the dogs were savages, a danger to people. She called animal control and they came for the 5 dogs. When my mom and the lady from across the street went to rescue them, to pay the fine so they could bring them back, no. This time, as soon as they arrived, they took them straight to be put down. When my parents went to get them out the next day, they were told they weren't there anymore. Up to now, this is a sad story, it says, but there's a reason I'm telling it here, right? And I appreciate your patience. And that night, When they came back and gave us the news, they also went to tell the neighbors. That night, my parents took me to their room to watch movies until I fell asleep. But before that, I noticed they closed the windows and curtains. They locked the door. They closed everything. At night, I was awakened by a scream, a distant scream out on the street. I remember the first thing I thought was La Llorona, but my mom laughed and told me to go back to sleep. I asked her what it was, but she only told me to go to sleep again. She kept insisting I had to get up early. And in fact, yes. At 5 in the morning, we were already on our way to Social Security for an appointment we had with my doctor. I remember very well how, when we left that early morning, the street looked different. All the lights outside were off, all the windows were closed. Not even the yard dogs were outside, as if they had been allowed to sleep inside that night. When we came back, we noticed a lot of activity, patrol cars, at the end of the street, in the tenement. The bad woman, the one who called the dog catcher, had died at dawn. But the worst part is that she died of fear, of a heart attack right in front of her door. What people said on the street back then was that this happened to her because she ordered the killing of the witch's dogs. That's what they called them. And you'll see, those little dogs that I had always known were the offspring of 2 dogs owned by a lady who lived in the wooden house on that vacant lot. A lady they called the witch. Before she died, she asked the neighbors not to touch the dogs, that they didn't have to take care of them if they didn't want to, but that no one should touch them because she would come back. Of those 5 puppies that died, 2 were her children, the ones that were left from the last litter the original dogs had. The other 3 were stray dogs that had found shelter there, and they became part of the pack. Apparently, there was another incident before with a puppy. Supposedly, people on the street already knew that that threat wasn't an empty one. But honestly, I don't know that story. Me? A friend told me that he and his sister got up to take a look when they heard the screams at dawn, the same crying that I heard, that they got up without their parents knowing. They say they saw a woman who could barely walk, so hunched over that she was almost on all fours. She came out of the vacant lot crying and walked very slowly, step by step, all the way to the end of the street. They say she was going to the boarding houses. From there, nobody knew what happened. A few months later, a female dog took shelter in the same vacant lot. She had her puppies there. Shortly after, they started clearing the land because they were going to build, and my parents took one of the puppies. Among the neighbors, they kept the rest of the puppies as a final favor to the witch, or maybe out of fear of having done nothing and falling under the curse. And I know perfectly well that this may sound like just a legend, but I'm writing to you with Rufino sitting here on my lap. The grandson of the dog my parents kept from the last generation of dogs that took shelter there in that vacant lot. Sometimes I still tell him to scold him that he's the last witch's dog. This happened just last week. I'm still nervous because I'm pretty scared of anything paranormal. I don't think it's just imagination or suggestion, since what I'm about to share has been seen from several perspectives. I work as a reporter at a big newspaper in my city, and recently we had to cover a story until pretty late. My colleague and I came back at night when there was almost no one left in the newsroom. Since we arrived at the parking lot, the guards looked at us very tensely before letting us in. It seemed strange to me because we were in the company car and they already know us. But anyway, I let it go. Maybe it was so dark that night they had trouble recognizing us or something. We parked near the guard's booth, about 15 meters away. My partner went to the booth to fill out the vehicle return form, and I stayed leaning against the hood of the car, looking at my phone. That's when I felt someone staring at me. I turned to the booth and saw the guard squinting as if trying to recognize me. Again, it seemed strange to me. She already knew me pretty well, but she looked at me like she thought I was going to steal something or something like that. Then one of our teammates from sports came over and started talking to me. While talking to him, I noticed a girl entering the parking lot from the street, first in my peripheral vision, then I turned to look at her. It seemed odd because instead of going left toward the offices, she walked the other way, toward the darkest, loneliest part of the parking lot. And this girl, what's she up to? I said, they let anyone in here now. The sports guy replied. My other coworker came over. After dropping off the forms, we said goodbye to the guy from sports, and he and I walked to the office. As usual, the door took a few seconds to open. We walked down that long hallway to where we had to edit the information we brought, and that's how it all ended until the next day, when we actually found out what really happened that night. In the morning, another coworker came up to me and said, "Hey, did you hear what happened last night?" No. I mean, what am I supposed to tell you? It happened to you. I told him I didn't know what he was talking about. He asked me if the guards hadn't told me. I said no, and that's when he told me the story. The night before, when my coworker and I arrived, the guards hesitated to let us in because they said a woman was with us, a woman in the back seat. They tried to see who it was but couldn't, so they let us through. They probably thought it was another coworker. When I was waiting for my coworker leaning on the hood, the guard noticed that the girl got out with me when I took the equipment bag from the back seat. He says she stood by me. The guard came out, took a few steps toward me, trying to see who it was, but couldn't recognize her. He said she was wearing a cap that kept him from seeing her face, and the only thing he could really make out was the silhouette, just the silhouette. Then my coworker came out of the booth, walked over to me, and we headed to the office entrance. The guards watched the cameras closely. They saw the three of us. They saw the girl with us. She walked and waited with us while the door was opening. We went in, headed to the end of that long hallway to edit, and the girl walked halfway down it. We kept going, and she stopped for a moment, turned to her right toward a spiral staircase. After a moment, she moved forward and disappeared up the stairs, leaving the camera's field of view. By this point, both guards already knew that something was very strange, but neither of them dared to go check. To go up those newsroom stairs, which led to the newsroom area, they simply stayed in the guard booth. I'm sure they had just seen something paranormal. My partner and I talked about it, about how we didn't notice anything strange. Then I went to look for my sports friend, the one I talked to at night. He hadn't noticed anything either. I told him the only odd thing was that weird girl who entered the parking lot and disappeared into the dark. But he asked me which one. I reminded him. I told him that I had mentioned the one who was acting strange, and he had replied to me that now they let anyone in. But he looked at me like I was crazy and told me he had never said that. Believing I was wrong, I asked the guards to show me the cameras from when I arrived the night before. And here's the strangest thing, everyone. What I experienced and what the guards saw was different from what you can see there. In the recorded footage, I'm waiting for my friend next to the car and my other sports buddy comes up to me. I never leaned on the hood to look at my phone. I never talked behind the car with my sports friend. No one else ever enters the parking lot. Then, my friend and I walk toward the office entrance and disappear down the hallway until we get to where we were going to edit. You can't see anything else. Absolutely nothing strange appears? Except for the fact that both we and the guards know that what was recorded there didn't actually happen, at least not in that way. My city is violent. The car we arrived in, the one we brought her in, has to visit crime scenes every day. So I don't know. I think maybe somewhere along the way she got in with us, maybe trying to get away from the place where something bad happened to her. Perhaps not realizing she's gone. But she came in with us, went up to the editorial area. Like I told you, this just happened, but I promise that if anything starts happening there, I'll be writing to you again. Thank you for sticking around, community. As always, it's an honor that you let us accompany you with these stories that, even though sometimes they seem like just legends, often come with something more, of a reality much closer than we think, of a truth that we can't always explain, but that we feel. And if you like what we do in this space, remember that my book is still available, Relatos de la Noche, a book of horror stories, ghost stories, macabre journeys through time, written in a language that is closer to this podcast than to other horror books. It will surely be easy to read, it'll feel short, and it'll leave you wanting to keep reading. I'll leave the link in the description in case you want to have it, give it as a gift, or read it on a stormy night like this one. And now it's time to continue. The intermission is over. Let's go with the next story. Hello, community. I'm sharing this story from Aguascalientes, Mexico. It may not be exactly paranormal, but it's an experience that deeply affected my family and me. I believe it shows that sometimes evil doesn't manifest through ghosts or apparitions, but through people who are very close to us. It began when my grandfather became seriously ill. Gradually, he stopped eating, and his body deteriorated until he became malnourished. My dad and uncles took weekly turns caring for him and watching over him. By December 2023, my grandfather couldn't take it anymore and passed away. The whole family gathered to say goodbye to him. Everyone with a broken heart, everyone except one person, the wife of one of my uncles, who didn't show up. She had already clashed several times with my uncles and dad over issues about my grandparents' house. She lives in a part of the property that was divided years ago, but she always wanted to keep it all. My uncles claim that this woman practices black magic, and that once, without anyone asking her, she said something disturbing. First to know her dad, then her mom, and then her sister, referring to my grandpa, my grandma, and my aunt with a disability. Sadly, everything happened as she said. 2 months after losing my grandpa, my grandma also passed away. The strangest thing is that she showed exactly the same symptoms as he did. She stopped eating, her body gradually weakened, as if she were fading away. When we found out that my grandma had passed away, my dad and my brother went to her house right away. My dad entered the room, sat on the armchair at the foot of the bed, and immediately felt an inexplicable tiredness, as if something had suddenly drained his energy. He asked my brother to sit next to him to see if he felt the same, but it was a feeling only my dad experienced. Days after the funeral, while they were cleaning my grandmother's room, my cousin's girlfriend found a strange bag hidden away. It contained black soil, dry twigs, and red threads. She was so scared she didn't touch it. Everyone started to suspect the same person, my uncle's wife, because she and her family were the ones who had taken care of my grandma those days. My cousin's girlfriend cleaned the room with water, vinegar, holy water, and soap, then dumped it all in the street, sweeping it symbolically toward that woman's house, as if to send back all the bad things she might have sent. But that wasn't the end. A few days later, my cousins went to visit my grandparents' house. When they returned from the store, they saw this woman throw a black bag with dried lemons and dirt at their dad's truck, my uncle. When she realized she was being watched, she hurried inside, and fear was certain. Shortly after, my uncle's truck started breaking down constantly, one thing after another, as if it never had a solution. Besides, he said he felt exhausted, stressed, that his money just wasn't enough anymore, no matter how hard he tried to manage it. Finally, my parents decided to go to a man who reads and detects energies or spiritual work. As soon as my dad entered the room, the man immediately said something to my mom. They want to get this man out of the way. It's not because of another woman, eh? It's a job by someone very close. This gentleman described the person physically. It matched perfectly with my uncle's wife. They recommended us to wear a red bracelet with a St. Benedict medal and bless the house, and we did it without thinking. But maybe the most painful thing was the death of my little dog, who had been with me since I was 6 years old. One day we just found her lying in the yard with blood in her mouth and around her as if she had vomited blood. We didn't know what she died of, but my dad thought maybe she ingested something. Something that was meant for him, as if she had protected him, as if she had sacrificed herself. That thought broke us even more. Fortunately, since then, we haven't had any more confrontations or strange incidents with this woman. But the fear and anguish that this period left us, the pain of seeing our loved ones fall one by one, and the feeling of being attacked like this by someone so close, is something that is not easily forgotten. Unfortunately, we don't have a conclusion, but I'm telling this story because I hope it helps others to stay alert, not to be swayed by skepticism, and at the slightest suspicion, act and protect yourself as soon as possible. Greetings to you and to the entire Relatos de la Noche community. May you all be protected. Hi, Uriel. I'm Amanda from Santiago, Chile. I've been listening to your podcast for a couple of months, and I've become addicted to the stories. That also helped me make the decision to share mine with you. I really believe in the paranormal, and for better or worse, I've experienced situations related to it. Since I was little, I can sense when there are strange energies in a place. I see beings that aren't from this plane. I dream about them, and I've also felt them. My story happened in 2001 when I was around 13 or 14 years old. We had just moved to a new house after living in another area for several years. It was a big old house with a garage that had once been used as a business. That place in particular made me feel uneasy in a way I didn't feel anywhere else in the house. But with no other choice, I had to learn to live with that discomfort. One afternoon after school, my brother and I came back. My mother was home with our baby brother, who was less than a year old. We greeted her in the backyard. The baby was napping in his crib in my mother's room, and suddenly I heard from the garage,
"Come, quick, come!"
It was a man's voice, hoarse but gentle. I lifted my head and said to my mom and my brother, "Did you hear that? Dad's here. I'm going to see him." I went into the house, went out to the front yard, and there was no one there. I was left wondering, but I didn't have much time to think about it because the baby woke up and started crying inconsolably. I went to check on him and took him out of the crib. Until then, I hadn't noticed that his crying wasn't just because he had woken up or because he was alone in the room. Today, I believe the crying was for another reason. That same night when I went to sleep, I woke up in the middle of the night with a very strange feeling. I didn't really understand, but I felt very scared. My room faced the backyard, which got a lot of light, especially on nights with a full moon. I tried to be brave, got out of bed, and when I turned on the light in the room, I heard the bulb pop, like it suddenly burned out. I screamed in fear, and as I did, I heard and felt a whisper in my ear.
"I told you to come, but you don't obey."
My parents came to see me, and I told them there was someone there in the room with me who had just whispered things in my ear. My father is very skeptical, but my mother isn't, and she did believe me. That night I slept with her and my little brother in her room. We prayed a lot, trying to drive away whatever was there. After that day, things got worse. My room started to get mold on the walls, even though it was the middle of summer. Santiago isn't humid in the summer, so the mold was really strange. It became common for the light bulbs in the house to burn out. The humidity increased, the ceiling was full of flies, and the atmosphere felt stranger and stranger. One summer night, I fell asleep with my nightlight on. I was woken up by a strange feeling again. From my bed, I could see the main hallway of the house in the living room. I opened my eyes. The door to my room was wide open, and I could see a man sitting on the couch. He was an old man in slippers. He was smiling at me, only he was gesturing with his hand for me to come to him. The fear was so overwhelming that I couldn't scream or call for help. I just froze. I would close my eyes and open them again, thinking it was a hallucination. But no, he was still there, laughing at me very slowly.
Ha 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 ha!
I started praying, completely paralyzed with my eyes closed. After a while, I opened them and it was gone. I cried. I cried a lot. I was shaking with fear. It was so much that I peed myself. I think that was the worst night of my life. As days and weeks went by, something always happened. Things would break, light bulbs would explode, and the flies had become a plague. The bathroom and kitchen faucets turned on by themselves. The situation became unbearable. I felt very ill and weak. I had a nervous breakdown. My immune system weakened due to poor sleep. Because I stayed up late even if I had to go to school the next day. Even if I was extremely tired, I couldn't stay home. My performance declined. I had dark circles, felt down, and doctors monitored me, but no one understood my sudden exhaustion. One afternoon after school, my mom went out to buy bread with my other brother, and I stayed home with the baby. We were playing in the yard when I felt like going to the bathroom. I left him in the crib while I went. When I returned to my parents' room, the baby was sitting in the middle of the bed, not in the crib where I had left him. And in the reflection of the television that was in front of the bed, I saw that man holding him. I took little brother out immediately, and in my desperation, I yelled at him to leave me alone, that I didn't want to see him anymore. But it was worse. That unleashed an even more violent and intense atmosphere. My health kept getting worse. My mother, already desperate, contacted a well-known medium in the area. They held a session that I didn't participate in because I was underage, but my mom says what she saw was something she never imagined. That entity had been living in that house for years. He was a man who had died alone, full of resentment because his family had abandoned him during his illness. He felt so much anger that he had become a very powerful presence. They managed to communicate with him. My mother says he just kept repeating one thing. The girl. I want the girl. Give her to me. She's mine. We left that house a couple of weeks later. They cleansed me, took me to church so the priest could bless and protect me. Over time, we ran into the owner of that house, who we found out had been that man's ex-wife. We told her what had happened to us, and with great sadness, she told us that she and her daughter also had to leave after Ricardo's death. That was his name because he never left them in peace. He never left, he used to tell us. He stayed because his anger toward us was infinite. He looked specifically at me. He apologized, then took out his phone and showed me a picture of his daughter when she was little. The coincidence frightened and unsettled me. That's all. My resemblance to his daughter was really striking. She thinks that this man believed I was his daughter, the one he never forgave for leaving that house at such a young age, nor for ending her own life. He was a very harsh man with his family during his lifetime. She believes that after dying with the sorrow of having lost her and the guilt for having been so cruel, that emotion kept him trapped on this plane. I believe we ended the cycle the day we visited the cemetery to leave him flowers and tell him I wasn't his daughter, that we were very sorry for what happened, and that we hoped his evil would end, that his sorrow would go away, that he could rest in peace. Thank you for reading my story, Uriel, and greetings from Santiago, Chile. And thank you very much to you, community, for listening to us in this episode, for making it to the end, and for forgiving us that the audio in this edition isn't the best. Because we're recording on the go, because we're probably recording with more noise than usual, but we couldn't leave you without an episode. We want you to always be able to trust that no matter how the week goes, there will be night stories. We'll talk soon with a special episode still pending. Good night.